Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Funnel Trade. We're going to take our very first look at Avatar Collector Box sales data off of TCG Player up through and including the R-14 date. That is 2 weeks prior to release. Friday, November 7th is the day that we are looking through. So in the whole pre-release period and up through and including Friday, November 7th, it has sold 2,190 boxes on TCG Player at a total of $1,419,000 for an average price per box of $648. Pretty unfavorable comparison against today's price of 583, and you see the TCG expansion lifecycle doing its thing during the pre-release period where it just comes down in price as those initial boxes get posted up, and a couple of people who just don't care about price at all, just want to see it on their porch a day or two after release, they will go ahead and buy in, and then as more sellers come into the market, they compete and push the price down. So we've seen this come way, 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 way down. It had first stabilized up here in the 900s many weeks ago, in fact, about 2.5 months ago. Now, what to compare this against, we are going to have to go to Spider-Man, Final Fantasy, and the original Lord of the Rings. And now, these lines start to blur together here. The yellow line of Final Fantasy is still well ahead, as we will expect it to be for a ways into the future. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Universes Beyond release sometime in 2026 that takes the crown away from Final Fantasy, but for now, it is still firmly in the lead. And then we have the blue line of Avatar coming into this mix right around here. I'll zoom in just a second, and intersecting the red line of Spider-Man and that purple line of the original Lord of the Rings from 2023. So let's go ahead, and looks like we already have the zoom in cursor. We'll go ahead and zoom, and you see the end of the blue line here, which is the termination of the data that we have collected for this. And it is just barely, barely, barely in fourth place all time, the fourth best selling product in Magic's history. And this is something I keep trying to remind people of, is that even when we feel bad about these products, even when we've seen the price fall from $900 where it first stabilized 2.5 months ago down to $583 on TCG Player this morning, it is still the fourth best selling product in all of Magic's history. And if you want a little more to be sad about, let's add Edge of Eternities and Tarkir Dragonstorm onto this. These are the two best-selling universes within products in Magic's history, and you see how they both appear here. The green line of Edge of Eternities collector boxes and the light blue line of Tarkir Dragonstorm collector boxes falling well below, and by release day falling about $1 million below this pack that right now contains the two, the Lord of the Rings and Spider-Man, and potentially will contain Avatar, depending on which way it breaks from here. So for now, again, it feels bad seeing how the price has fallen. The attitude around the set is bad. It's probably worse than normal. You're always going to find people with a bad attitude about every single release of every expansion and every product within that expansion. For every TCG, you'll find someone being negative on the internet. But for this, it seems it's accumulating a little more quickly, especially with those awful low resolution screen grab cards that are just ridiculous. Just the low effort put into those. Just awful. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the price fall on this product, but I do kind of expect it to not do too badly. I would expect it to be somewhere around $2 million of total sales for these collector boxes. That would be right about here by release day. So, I expect it to come up there and make, what would that be? About another $600,000 in between here and there, or sorry, about a million. Yeah, about $600,000 in between today's 1.4 million and a release day estimate of about 2 million. So it's going to do fine. And unless WotC has drastically increased the print run numbers on collector boxes, which right now we still don't have any evidence that they've done. Unless they've done that, these will do fine in the long term. So I would not expect them to look like Hold Time, for instance, where we're getting on nearly 5 years after its release, and they're still struggling to stay above original MSRP type prices. I would expect this to do fine in the long term, Again, unless in a year from now, we've seen a lot of evidence that print runs of collector boxes have been drastically increased. But right now, we still won't see that evidence out there. So I'll take another look at this a week from today at the R-7 date and on a little after release day, the day after, so that we get all the release day data. And at that point, I also release a video showing all of the Play Booster Box pre-release data all in one. And then I take various looks at these data post-release just to see what it's doing before I move on to other sets. So subscribe so you don't miss any of that. Let me know what you think, guys. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade.